welcome to Arcview's Massachusetts Town Hall. I'm Laura Toomey, Chief of Staff at the Arcview Group, and excited to kick things off with all of you to discuss happenings in Massachusetts. For those that are joining us for the first time, Arcview Group is the industry's first full-scale ecosystem that enables companies, investors, partners, and leaders to leverage opportunities, address business challenges, and mitigate risk. If you'd like more information on any of our service offerings, please check out arcviewgroup.com. The Massachusetts Town Hall today will be the 8th in the series. These town halls are a great way for investors, job seekers, and advocates to learn more about resources and to connect with the cannabis community. Before we begin, I want to thank our alliance partners. They are so impactful to making these webinars a success and helping to create reliable resources for the industry. Thanks to Dwayne Morris, who will be on the webinar today and providing invaluable legislation insights, Green Growth CPA, AlphaRoot, GrowFlow, Work, Ice Miller, and Zuber Lawler. Reminder to find the Arcview Group on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. There will be a short poll launching on your screen in the upcoming minutes, and we'd love to hear about what interests you the most for upcoming Arcview programming. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our moderator to the stage, Jeff Finkel, who is CEO here at the Arcview Group. Take it away, Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Laura, and welcome everybody. I am excited for this town hall today. As I've said before, I'm a real fan of our town hall programming. It's really, I think, the only nationally broadcasted series of webinars that take a deep dive into the current state of businesses in regional cannabis markets. And we all know that some business dynamics that are present in one region aren't or don't apply to another, which is why I think our viewers find real value in this program. The other reason I'm excited today is that I'm a Massachusetts native. Yep, born in Fall River, Mass, and raised in Newton, Mass, proud graduate of Newton North High School, and after 27 years in New York, still a proud fan of the Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, and Bruins, and even Tom Brady, even though many of my family think he's a traitor. So how about that for loyalty? All right, so look, by every measure, the Mass Adult Rec program is a successful one. Despite a very slow start, I think it took 2 years from approval of the program to the opening of the first dispensary, and that is far too long. But that said, as a limited license state, retailers in good locations are doing very, very well. Wholesalers are getting top dollar for flower, and many California brands have found in-state license partners to manufacture and sell their brands. Sales are expected to double from some 700 million last year to 1.4 this year, and then just about double again to 2.6 in 2025. So great state, great program. So now let's dig a little bit. So let me first welcome to our stage the amazing Jocelyn Sheltra, Director of Industry Relations at Headset, to present some data around Massachusetts adult use. So Jocelyn, welcome. And just listen at the outset, I want to thank you and Headset for being really a great partner and showing great support for Arcview. So look, to kick off, why don't you just give us a quick intro of yourself and your cannabis journey?
Yeah, absolutely. What's up, everyone? I see some friendly names in the participant group here, so that is wonderful. So I've been a part of the cannabis industry for about 3.5 years at this point. I originally, pretty much since graduating college, I spent my career working with app developers the year the iPhone came out. And so initially, when I was looking at the cannabis industry, it was sort of from that frame of mind of like, okay, cannabis is going to be the next new emerging industry. I'm going to be able to replicate this incredible journey that I had in tech. And I just didn't realize getting into it how much just the community and the culture and just how much this plant is changing our society. It has just been the most fun journey. And I cannot believe how much I'm learning. And I'm seeing a lot of parallels now between cannabis and tech. And I hope to be able to kind of share some of those learnings because I think there is a lot that we can learn from other industries that we can be applying to cannabis. And what I do at Headset is I'm really responsible for our market expansion information, and I'm out in market. I'm meeting with the community all across the US and Canada, and I'm explaining what we do at Headset. I'm sharing a lot of the trends and the data. Because this is a new emerging industry, a lot of what we're doing at Headset is really new for people, right? We're coming out of a market that has traditionally not used any data to track anything. So as an industry, we just haven't had a lot of the insights that businesses have needed to really be successful and, run an efficient operation. And so that's what I'm really out in market doing. And so I'm going to go through some of what we've been seeing in the Massachusetts market, but I'm also going to try to bring in some insights as I've been working across, so many other states and provinces. I think it's really important that we just have some understanding how different states are doing. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so before I go into the data, I want to explain how we get the data, because this is obviously very important for everyone to understand. And so what we do at Headset, we're a cannabis data and analytics company, but I'll really stress that we're a software company at our core. And so what we do is we provide a piece of software for the dispensary, pulls in all their point of sale data, turns all that data into actionable reports and visualizations for the dispensary to understand all their sell-through rates, to understand who their customers are. Now, what we do on the back end, because we're partnered via an API connection to all these point of sale systems, is that we're aggregating all of that data in real time. And then once we get to a statistically sound enough sample size of data in a state or a province, which generally we'd need to see around 20% of sales in a market to do a sound enough read in real time on that market. So Massachusetts, for example, we see about 30% of all transactions that come through the state. And then what we do is we really forecast that data up based off using a combination of AI, robots, machine learning, and humans to go through and cleanse and normalize all that data. So everything that I'm going to walk through in these subsequent slides, this is going to be all a real-time view of what we're looking at in Massachusetts. So let's rock on to the next slide. Okay. So I hope you can see my cursor here. Massachusetts is going to be this line in red right here. And so to Jeff's point, Massachusetts has been so interesting to watch because number one, it's so exciting because this is the first legal recreational market on the East Coast, right? And as Jeff mentioned, the medical program got kicked off in 2012. Or it passed in 2012, and rec sales didn't actually, or that was medical, recreational got passed in 2016, and then the first recreational sales didn't happen for 2 years later. So this was November of 2016. Sales didn't start till November of 2018. So initially, as you can see, like on this far left in red, sales really, it took some time to get sales going in Massachusetts. And then, as you can see, kind of in the middle here, you see this big dip, and this is, in May of 2020. As y'all know, sales closed down for 2 months during COVID. So even though cannabis had been deemed essential, stores had closed for that 2-month period. So obviously that had a huge impact on the market. And then, just that month later, or 2 months later, sales come back online, and then we start to see that growth again. And I think because there's a lot of, investors and retailers and brands, or just general operators that are on this call, a lot of probably what you're wanting to understand is, hey, well, what's really the opportunity in Massachusetts? And I think the reason that it's important to look at other states is we need to think about the nuances of licensing when it comes to cannabis, right? Because every state has different policies. And one of the interesting things about Massachusetts is its limited licensing model, which generally means that the retailers, the brands are going to make more money because of that limited licensing model. So if you look at some of the older, more traditional markets, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, where there's a lot more licensing on market, or in market, what generally happens is all of those retailers are making less money. Brands are making less money. You have a lot more competition. So this is, I think, one of the really exciting things about the Massachusetts market is it's $100+ million market at this point. You can see when sales start to pass a market like Oregon, which again, when you have that much licensing available, that generally is going to signal that you're going to have a higher amount of sales. So for Massachusetts to see this growth, to see it exceeding $100+ million per month, this is a really exciting for the market. And I think this is a signal of how strong the market is. And that licensing component, if we can go to the next slide, is really a key piece of that. And so what you can see here, so this data is actually from MJ Biz. They're a partner of ours, which we regularly provide them data. But I wanted to pull this in because when we're looking at things like in this kind of top quadrant where it says the licenses issued, I just really want to kind of speak to this because again, this is really what we're going to see attributed to higher growth and higher sales. And one of the things that I'm seeing happen, particularly on the West Coast, is on the cultivation side. So there's 83 cultivation licenses, there's 168 retail licenses, though I know not all of those stores are open at this point. Per Jeff's comment about flower prices being a lot higher, this is a signal of a really strong market where operators are going to be making more money because if you look at what's happening on the West Coast right now, or in any market that has a vast amount of cultivation licenses, you're seeing massive oversupply issues with flower right now, which means it's decreased pricing. So a lot of the operators then are really struggling, which a lot of companies, most cannabis companies, this is a very hard industry to operate in and be successful in. But when you have these dynamics where there's significantly more licenses, especially on the cultivation or the retail side, you're then generally going to make less money as an operator. And so this is just something I think is really interesting about the Massachusetts market, and we'll see how this kind of develops over time. And you can see on the right here just some projections about how big the market is actually going to be. So, nearing that 2.6 billion in just a few short years. So next slide, please. Okay, so just to kind of summarize some of, what's happened, like if we look at just the last 3 years, this has been a $2 billion market. And so again, this is really incredible when we're looking at more mature markets that have been online a lot longer, that are making around this same, amount of money with not as many or with significantly more retail stores. And so if we go to the next slide, one of the things, actually go one more. One of the things that we need to think about for Massachusetts is, okay, so how is this category spread going to develop over time? And so what we're looking at here is on the far left, this is going to be January of 2021. And I want to point out a couple things that have just happened over the last, 9-month period in Massachusetts when it comes to product development. So what we're seeing here is initially in any market, especially when you're first coming online, flower is going to be the predominant category of sales. It always is in every market. And what we see over time in a market as it becomes more mature is that the category share to flower starts to decrease as we see new product innovation coming into market. And so that's really what we're seeing here. So when we look in January of 2021, in red here, that's going to be the flower market share. So we're seeing about 48% of sales going to flower, loose flower. We see pre-roll sales at 16% in orange. And then what we see is pretty much month over month, the flower sales begin to decline. And then that's being other categories are kind of coming in and taking that market share. And that's also because consumers are getting used to cannabis being destigmatized. We're seeing brands like Levia, beverage company that's coming into market and has beautiful branding, really communicating their ethos out to the market. A lot of these brands are really helping destigmatize, which we're then seeing product innovation in other categories. So we start to see growth in other categories and then those declines in flower. So now where we're at with flower, we're really starting to see it stabilize, right? It's going to be in the low 40% of sales. This is generally where most other markets are at. And so one of the things that is good to keep an eye on, so vape pens, right? Vape pens, we see at the beginning of January, 17%. We've seen a 2-point percentage increase to nearly 19%. Which we tend to see this happen in any cities, right? So if you look at California, for example, you're going to see a high amount of vape pen sales. This tends to be the case. I think consumers, are looking for more discreet methods, especially when they're in a big city. And so we start to see vape pen sales increase, which will generally be around the low 20%, mid 20% of sales. The other interesting thing here has just been the growth in pre-rolls. And we're seeing this in a lot of markets. So originally that 16% all the way to 18%. This tends to happen just as, again, consumers are becoming more familiar. We're seeing a lot more women come into the industry. Pre-rolls is a category to which they generally over-index in sales just because of easeability. You're not having to roll it. And so we see that increase here. So, I think this is generally what the category assortment is going to look like over the next, year plus. But we'll see as more operators, like those, I'm using the example of Levia because I respect what they've built with their brand and just the consumer messaging out in market. But this is really an opportunity because of that limited licensing, because there's so much power in the brand to really develop your brand and innovate. And we can see any of these categories really shift, but there's so much power in the operator at this point that I hope what you're taking from this is that a lot of this is in your control based off of what products you want to build and what kind of innovation you want to have in market. And we see these categories shift based off producers making that shift. So if we go to the next slide, please. The other thing I wanted to touch on, so when Massachusetts initially got kicked off, they had the highest basket size out of all of the states that we were tracking at Headset. And I think anyone who went to a dispensary in Massachusetts remembers there was massive lines, massive lines. And so that resulted in all of this interest. The basket size was around $96 at that point, which was the highest out of any market. And then over time, generally what we see is the basket size, just the market starts to stabilize, the basket size starts to go down. So we're again seeing Massachusetts in red here. And so we'll see over time, this is just over the past 5-month period or 6-month period. The basket size has gone from, just over $80, $84 to around $76. And I think that's because you're having more stores come online, that 160 plus stores at this point. You're going to continue to see that happen. So if you're a retailer, it's good to really prepare for that. If your expectation is, hey, our consumers are going to be spending $96 or what it's at now, $76, that's not going to be the case as more licensing comes online. And, consumers have more choices to where they're going to purchase. And next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly call out, there's a ton of free resources that we have on our website. I'm going to pop some links into the chat box. I see that a question came up about where can we access the presentation. So I will send that out to the team. Everyone can have access to this. But I want to mention these sources as well, because we have a ton of free information on our website that'll help you understand more about the Massachusetts market and looking at other markets. So I will leave it at that. And if there's any questions, pop them into the chat link, and then I'm happy to answer those.
Great. Good stuff. Thank you, Jocelyn. Jocelyn, if you had to put on your thinking cap and look through your crystal ball, how do you see that product mix sort of evolving, let's say, over the next 2 to 3 years? To what extent will core flower start to be less meaningful, and beverages and edibles become even more meaningful at a greater rate?
Yeah, we get asked this question a lot. And so this is one of the reports that I'll pop in the chat link, but we're doing 2-year forecasts now.
Yeah.
And what we're anticipating for the next 2 years, and I'm going to speak to aggregated data across the whole US, we're not going to see a whole lot of change in the category spread. And I think in part it's because, this is a very tough industry to be a part of. It's very tough to be innovative when you have a lot of things stacked against you, and resources are generally tight on a people front, and resources are tight on a financial front for a lot of operators. So that doesn't leave a lot of room for people to do heavy product innovation. Also, because operators are so limited in the channels that they have for marketing, this then doesn't allow companies to be able to help explain to consumers what they're doing. Therefore, we're going to see basically whatever the status quo has been. If we're not going to have outside change in our industry, meaning some massive policy change, some changes where we're going to have Instagram and Facebook and regular publishers allowing cannabis campaigns at scale, we're really going to continue to see the same thing. And that's what we're predicting for the next 2 years at Headset. The categories are essentially going to look like they're looking now. Flower is always going to most likely be the predominant category of sales. However, one thing that I'll mention, and this is something we've never seen this before actually until last summer in California, Gen Z, so younger people are very interested in vape. And so what we saw in California was that for the first time, Gen Z women, so these are people that are turning 21 and aging into the market every day. They, it's from 1996 and they're on. And for the first time, we saw that vape sales had surpassed flower. And so, so I think for cannabis industry operators, you really want to think about what are these younger generations, what are their consumption patterns like? And that may kind of speak to what we're going to see downstream when it comes to flower sales. But they should always be the predominant, generally, category of sales.
Great. Yeah, that's a little counterintuitive, but thank you for that. And thank you for your insights. And again, thank you for being such a great partner to Arcview. We really do appreciate you.
Yeah. And Austin, I see your note here. When I say limited state, I don't mean it's a limited licensing model. I mean, if you look at the number of licenses that have been available, I'm using the word limited, is that it's pretty limited for a state of 7 million people. And having only 160, retail licenses that have been issued, 83 cultivation licenses. This is pretty limited, not in terms it's a limited closed state in terms of licensing, meaning it's limited in terms of the number of licenses that are available at this point.
Terrific. Jocelyn, thank you so much. We always enjoy having you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So I think we're going to post the survey again now. Are we, Erica? So that people, it'll stay on, but it's really important that you do fill this out because, it's really our goal to really understand your interests and bring you the content-rich events that best serve you. So please fill that out when you get a chance. It's, again, appreciated. So now let's invite the rest of our panelists to our stage. If you could all sort of turn on your cameras, great. So look, I am going to spend a few minutes with each of you and ask some questions and then move on to the next. And at the end, time permitting, I'll pose some questions to the group. So let me start off and introduce Ryan Anson, right? My good friend and colleague, Ryan Anson, one of my favorite people in this industry. And honestly, one of the first people I met as I engaged in this industry. I had the great pleasure of visiting Ryan's facility in Fitchburg, Mass. Well, I guess it's now 2 years ago. It's sort of, I always have to account for this lost year. Really impressive operation, really amazing. So Ryan, what part of the world are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Juan-les-Pins, France, just a bit away from Nice.
Yeah, well, look, thank you for making yourself available for this.
Great to be
Ryan,
here.
why don't you start by just really introducing yourself and describing Rev Clinics today?
Sure. I've been investing in this space directly for 6 years. We've 14 holdings within my family office, also an LP of 2 funds, and I advised throughout the course of this industry's history, 2 funds, 1 debt fund and 1 private equity group out of Hong Kong. Rev was a wonderful mistake, one of my favorites of my lifetime. I had been removed from West Africa, where I was working on a anti-human trafficking project out there during the Ebola crisis, and wondered what was going to be my next thing in the United States. And I had always wanted to create jobs in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, where I grew up. And my family was trying to get rid of a old shoe factory from a past industry that was one of our focuses. And I wanted to grow basil and strawberries and microgreens to create jobs. And it seemed more viable to create a medical cannabis facility back then in 2016. And so we started going down that path. A little bit of an echo here, Jeff.
Yeah. I think, let me just.
Testing. That seems fine.
My headphones ran out of juice. Is the echo still there? Or is that...
Jeff used to be a tech investor, so we'll forgive his headphones.
Yeah. Got
you.
Is it better?
Yep. Perfect. Okay, thanks. Awesome. So we started Revolutionary Clinics in 2016 with a very clear medical focus then. And today, fast forward through all kinds of trials, tribulations, great growth, difficult growth, managing through Massachusetts complexity. We're proud to be distributing to over 100 dispensaries. We're one of the larger wholesalers in the state because of one thing that you'll likely ask about on the struggles side, because of conflicting regulations versus legal. Revolutionary has been far slowed down on adult use sales outside of wholesale. So we've been very successful there. But that has been incredibly frustrating and disappointing and time consuming for the company. People ask me all the time, how is it going broadly in the industry, and how's it going in Rev? And I always say, it depends on the yardstick that you're asking about. This is a wildly complex industry. I'm mostly proud that we've created nearly 400 jobs in a town that really needed it. And we helped write the regulations to catalyze a few thousand jobs in that area. So from that initial thesis, it's going really well. From a revenue and EBITDA perspective, compared to other industries, I'm proud to say that we're a very healthy company. Most of that is because, and thanks to so many great partners. We really focused our efforts when we got slowed down on adult use retail, which is now following through in Q4 of this year and Q1 of next year, thank goodness. But we focused on supporting others. That's really how we as a family run businesses in the past, and that's what I care to continue to do. So both from a philanthropic effort side, as well as catalyzing really great operators in Massachusetts with product, with terms, with solution sets. As Charlotte will share with you, opening these stores is simply nonlinear. You don't quite know which dragons are going to be lurking in the next corner. And after you've helped a couple dozen at the starting line, you're able to roll out a really efficient playbook for them, not taking equity, not doing anything that, not doing anything other than being great partners in a difficult state. And so sometimes complexity breeds good friendships and good corporate alliances.
Yeah, you really are appreciated in this industry, but you have grown a very successful wholesale business. Now
Sure.
you're a leading provider. How did you do it? Like, what were some of the challenges you specifically had to sort of rolling out that part of the business? I'm not going to say it was a pivot, but it was a
Sure.
change in direction due to some of the challenges on the retail side.
Yeah. Look, when we started this, I've had the advantage of being both on the investment side and the operating side. And there's always a new hottest topic that people are talking about. And for a good chunk of time that we were focused on the nuts and bolts of running a company and where the rubber meets the road, people were talking about brands being everything. And what we said was, brands, like any evolving industry, will become a real focal point. But right now, what matters is consistency, delivering on time and treating people right, and having high quality product that you can stand by. I remember being having phone calls very late at night around Vapegate and people trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube around this catastrophe created by the black market, and that situation was an example of knowing exactly what was in our vape cartridges, knowing exactly what our SOPs were, and instead of running around with the roof on fire, knowing that we were operating ethically, morally, scientifically, efficiently. And that's where it starts. So as Jeff knows, and some other folks, part of our family's history was in operating and co-founding the company Cole Haan. And I like pointing out that the logo for Cole Haan is Times New Roman uppercase 8 letters, because it took decades to build the brand around hand-sewn shoes. This is not different. One of the numbers that I'm most proud of in Revolutionary, I just looked at this today, is for the last 12 months, we've had over a 99% monthly success rate in delivering the right boxes, the right products. And, you know, folks like Charlotte and the 163 other dispensaries that have licenses right now, they have a lot of fires to put out on a daily basis. And for folks to show up late with the wrong products or the wrong numbers or trying to slip something in to get a little extra bump, all of those things are really frustrating. So it's about running a real business. And now two things are happening in wholesale. One is inherent to Massachusetts. Well, one is inherent to the normalization of the market. And then another one is something that is the blend of two of my worlds, cannabis and supply chains from my past lives. And the first one is really important for everyone to recognize is we're right now at the first time where sub-segmentation in your market is going to be critical. No longer can you just post a flag and sell cannabis to cannabis users. You need to have a target audience. You need to meet them where they are. You need to give them a frictionless opportunity to purchase it. And match that with goods, just like Amazon's product recommendations. The industry's not doing that. And so that's one of the more positive, exciting areas that we're focused on at Rev. The second one that's closer to my heart, even though sub-segmentation is certainly interesting as a strategy, but closer to my heart, most industries present moment have realized that aspirational consumers are catching up to the idea that low prices are subsidized by low wages, labor problems, human trafficking, all kinds of global supply chain issues. That's what I used to do in fashion, food, and diamonds, is giving people more ethical sources for these luxuries that they cared about. And we're now doing that in cannabis. We have found an incredible provider for carbon positive sugar in Brazil. We found an in-country creator for cacao in Ecuador. We're doing this with cotton in our uniforms. We're going through everything. It's going to take 3 full years, I believe. But the first two commodities, sugar and chocolate, are handled. And we have a long list thereafter. And people need to catch up to this in cannabis, because otherwise we're going to look back and say, like every other industry, we need to shut down those lines. We need to shut down those companies and put the toothpaste back in the tube. And it's not easy.
Amazing stuff. And, you know, you're so appreciated for taking that view and trying to do what's right. You know, one of the things that I appreciate about you, and I know the rest of the industry does, is the fact that you co-funded, not co-founded, but co-funded a comprehensive study on social equity programs. Many of these programs that are put in place state by state are often well-intended, but
Sure.
don't often deliver on its intended purpose. So tell us just a little bit about the study and maybe some of the key takeaways.
Yeah, super proud of it. Proud of the execution, proud of the team, and excited about what's coming from it. So the nature of the study was such that we witnessed some really what I think of as socioeconomically misguided decisions. Someone said they wanted to achieve Plan A. They turned down an opportunity for that. They enacted Plan B, and much capital was lost for folks that everyone wanted to get into business. And so what we participated in was a great idea that came out of the initiative, which I think some entrepreneurs from the initiative are on this call, and I applaud them, to support, leverage, finance, which we did in part, BIPOC authors, BIPOC researchers, to do the first national deep dive on what has worked, what hasn't, what has been said, and what are the unintended consequences of, as you said, really well-intended city or state officials sitting around a table and doing their best to come up with a matrix of rules to make this an inclusive and diverse industry, which we applaud, support, and have put our money where our mouth is since day one. What has resulted state over state, almost city over city, is a lot of great well-intended consequences have fallen short. And all we wanted to do in helping to fund this study was see, looking back on data, which is a privilege because people are trying to create rules and build a plane while they fly it, but looking back on the data, what did work? Because in every state and every city, there are nuggets of gold, and that's wonderful. So we should take all of that data and piece it together and enact it. So some of the key takeaways were delays in timing of opening different license classes is not a predominant factor in what people, in what makes or breaks someone's success. It's capital, it's business experience, and it's avoiding, I can't say it strongly enough, avoiding predatory terms coming from dictatorial financiers that demand shelf space, demand debt loads that are going to cripple your business. My last industry, as I said, was in West Africa, and the same debt rates were in loan sharking that ended up in the resulting of stealing children that we have seen in this industry. It's bonkers. So there's a lot there. It's all public. Go to the initiative, Google the initiative and find it. It's really great stuff.
Super stuff. I was able to get an advanced view of the report. You should all really look at this report. It's really great. So look, Ryan, thank you again. Thank you for being available. Please stay on for the rest of the program. But we appreciate you. We appreciate not only your contribution to your business, but your contribution to the industry. Thank you
for Arcview.
Yeah, thanks. Let me now move on to Charlotte Hanna. We are an investor in her business, Rebel. Charlotte, are you in Brooklyn today where you live, Great Barrington where you work, or elsewhere? Where are you calling from?
I'm in Los Angeles right now.
Oh, so am I. So that's right. So we're near each other.
Right.
I could probably throw a softball and hit you. But thank you for being available. Look, I visited your beautiful store 2 weekends ago when I was in Great Barrington. I drove by 3 other stores to get to you. I think there are now 5 or 6 in Great Barrington, and you weren't the first, yet you are succeeding. So describe for us how you differentiated and maybe talk about the vibe that you've created at Rebel.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yes, the western part of Massachusetts, where I am in Great Barrington in Berkshire County, has become a fairly crowded market because lots of people like me see that it's a border community. We're 10 minutes from New York, we're 10 minutes from Connecticut, and so we do draw on a lot of cross-border customers. And so it's been really interesting and fun to make our place in that market. And it's funny that Ryan was talking about like differentiation and sub-segmentation, and we definitely did approach this with a very specific customer in mind and a very specific point of view about how we were going to present ourselves to that customer. And so I think that differentiation has really helped us do very well in the market because we know who our customer is, and we're very deliberate about how we market and sell to them. And so we definitely are targeting, the affluent Berkshire County second home community. Our price point is high. Our average basket, it's interesting. I know, and it's $79 or $76 in the state. Ours is $180 net.
Wow.
We're 2.5 times the state average. We actually subscribe to Headset as well. It's a great tool. It's really helpful for retailers. And so we know how we're doing in our basket penetration. And we know what's been really interesting, being in this competitive, seemingly crowded market has not impacted our growth curve. We are actually outpacing the overall market. And we know that from our Headset data by about 15% month over month. So even though there has been competition, we continue to grow at about 16% month over month. And so we're doing really well. And it's because of that vibe that we created. We know that our customer is we're going after that newer customer. Our product mix is totally different. We only sell 30% flower in our store. I was very intentional about going after the new canna-curious consumer And that's who we attract. So we, you know, and we create a very warm. I designed the store myself using the Danish design principle of hygge, which means it's a sort of a like feng shui Danish style. It's about designing a space to feel cozy and comfortable and approachable and accessible. That's what I really thought was very important for the new customer. I didn't want everything behind a glass case and hidden. I wanted people to you can pick up the flower. It's tethered down to the counter and smell it and look at it. You can pick up packaging. You can walk around. It's like a store in LA. I just went to go to Sweet Flower, one of my favorite places, and you know, it's very similar to that. So yeah, we were very intentional about the way that we designed the brand point of view, the space, and then the way we trained our people. It's all about culture. You know, everybody says we have such a warm, friendly space, but we also have very warm, friendly, approachable staff too. Because that new customer walks in. I have so many people come in and go, I have no idea. And I always say, you've come to the right place. We're the I have no idea place. Like, we are here to help you figure this out. And people love us for that.
That's great. You know, I have so many questions for you, but I do want to be able to get to everybody. So I'm now looking at my list, figuring out really where I want to go through. Why don't we try this? You know, you've described part of the vibe, but you also, you know, put a lot of work into sourcing products for resale that you want to stock. So what goes into that analysis? How do you sort of think about vendor selection and qualification?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, we actually test everything ourselves first. That's the fun part about being in the industry. So our cultivator, we're building a grow in Northampton, brought one of his cultivators with him. He's our sales manager. And these guys have been growing in Northern California forever. And so he is the tester. If it passes Kenny's test, then, you know, that's how we really are very rigorous about quality. We want to make sure that we always have a quality product on the shelves. And also that, and so that's the very first most important thing. And then the second most important thing from our perspective is being able to provide a platform for diverse suppliers. I really care about social equity too. And so we do a lot of work to showcase women-owned businesses, LGBTQ-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, social equity and economic empowerment. There aren't many operators. We're really excited. Just incredible. We carry his flower first economic empowerment, I think, license holder in cultivation, fully owned. You know, we're just about to carry one of our other panelists. We're going to carry their edibles here soon. So that's a big factor too. I want to be able to provide a platform to help, you know, young, new startup brands get to market. And we're really, we are really good at helping brands launch, because the product's packaging isn't hidden somewhere in a drawer. It's on, we showcase it and merchandise it out on the shelves so people can bring those brands to life.
Great. Listen, stay with us, Charlotte. But you mentioned, you know, buying from one of the upcoming panelists. So that must be Phil and Jenny. So let's move on to Phil and Jenny. Hi guys, how are you? From Freshly Baked. Love the name, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love it. So let's start with you, Jenny. Tell us your story. Let us know sort of about your background and how you came to build Freshly Baked, and maybe even go in and describe what Freshly Baked is.
Sure. Well, first I'd like to say TB12 forever. I'm also a loyal Tom Brady fan. Can't let that go.
All right.
But we definitely have a unique path here in the Massachusetts market. We are both service-connected disabled veterans. Phil is an Iraq combat veteran. I myself am an Air Force medic who was a 9/11 first responder at the Pentagon. So together, when we created our company, we kind of checked every box there was to check. We had the female, the minority, and the social equity brand. So for us going into this, it started off just us using this as a way to feel better, essentially. And it's grown from there. We started creating our own products, which turned into an amazing business. So we're kind of like the mom and pop shop that can do it all, that's hopeful and grateful that in this market, you can dream big and become anything you want.
Great, great. So Phil, so to give us a better sense for how a social equity license differs from an economic empowerment license, and talk a little bit about the program that Freshly Baked is in or part of.
Sure. Yeah, I'm part of the first cohort of the social equity program in Massachusetts. I was a graduate. That's also how we became the first recreational home delivery company on the East Coast, which we're very proud of. The economic empowerment program differs from the social equity program in a few different ways. There are more qualifiers in the economic empowerment program that revolve around drug conviction, either yourself or a loved one. And then there are a lot more requirements once you become an economic empowerment owner, for hiring. The social equity program is kind of a watered down version of that, where if you live in one of the cities that have been deemed an area of disproportionate impact by the CCC, and those are cities that have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, mainly cannabis, and also if you've been arrested, conviction, or a parent who's had a conviction. So the social equity program is really 3 qualifiers. If you meet one of those, then you can get into the program. There's about 14 classes. I think cohort 3 is going on right now. If anyone's out there, sign up, get into the program. I really enjoyed the program. I think the CCC has been working on it and it's getting better. But those classes really helped, the connections that were made as well. So that's pretty much the differences there.
Great. So what are some of the hardest parts of building Freshly Baked, and what's ahead for you as it relates to scale and growth?
Sure, I think capital. I think everyone, can agree. Capital all around is always difficult, especially for social equity and small companies. Jenny and I, we're not fancy. We have some entrepreneurial background, but we have military experience that can far outweigh some of that experience. We don't have a lot of connections, so there weren't friends to call to kind of bring money in. We had to do kitchen table pitches to everyone that we knew. The money that we had, which wasn't much because we are service-connected veterans. So we really bootstrapped this thing, and I think that we proved that it can be done. Capital is great. I wish we had capital right now. We would be scaling at unbelievable rates right now. I mean, we're at half the dispensaries in the state with just our gummies. Charlotte mentioned she was going to be working with us now, and she will be buying some of the speed tabs that we also make. We want to get gummies on those shelves, though, because I want the Moon Man flying around there. And Ryan as well at Rev Clinics. They've also purchased gummies from us in the summertime, but I think it's time for a reorder. I want to see some gummies in there. So capital would be great for us right now for the home delivery side, for the manufacturing side. And right now, our biggest money driver is manufacturing and wholesale. That's really our money maker right now. Home delivery just started, and it's getting better, and we're scaling there. But the partnerships that we have in the state, that's what's driving us. So again, it's capital. If you're good leaders, you're good leaders, and I think Jenny and I are both good leaders. We have a very good culture at Freshly Baked. Everyone, is like a family.
We have a great team,
right? It's super important. Like, we wouldn't be anything without our folks. I mean, they make Freshly Baked. But moving forward, for anyone who's listening, it's definitely capital. Bring as much capital in as you can without giving up the company. You're going to talk about this later on, and social equity to qualify delivery, we have to have 51% ownership there. We had to issue warrants that wouldn't be executed until the 3-year exclusivity period is up or a sale. So there are different ways that you can get creative to bring the money in and keep control, and I think that's important.
That's great. And lack of capital has forced you to be resourceful. So congratulations from doing so and getting your business off the ground and getting to your sort of early growth phase. Let me now introduce Michael Schwambe from Duane Morris. Duane Morris is headquartered in New York. You've got operations in Massachusetts, right, Michael, and throughout the U.S. Michael, just maybe start by introducing yourself and Duane Morris, and tell us about what you guys are doing at the firm.
Thanks, Jeff, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel with all you folks. I feel sort of like the weak link on the panel here, not being on the operating side. And so, I sit in New York. We view ourselves as the center of the universe. So the firm is actually technically headquartered in Philadelphia, but we do, we're in 20 cities in the U.S. and overseas. So we really have a large national cannabis practice and probably have clients and have worked on transactions or other related matters in just about every single state where cannabis is legal, as well as working with legislatures and even some foreign countries to develop legislation to hopefully take advantage of what we've seen being done wrong in other states or being with, what has been successfully implemented.
It's great. Social equity, while great in terms of being a social equity license holder, also imposes some restriction, right? You have to sort of keep control of the business economically. And I imagine from a governance standpoint, you have to have a control stake that you have to maintain in place for 3 years. What is the best way for social equity applicants to mitigate that restriction, which can often retard growth? What are some of the things that they can do? How should they be thinking about it?
I mean, great question. We certainly are, seeing it in Massachusetts, particularly now with the, lowering out the delivery. It's obviously a hot topic, a little further south in New York and New Jersey. Ultimately, as everyone has noted, but capital is king in this industry. Avoiding the predatory practices that Ryan mentioned is critical. So you don't, do things that essentially will deprive you of the ultimate economic benefits. I mean, the goal here with these social equity programs is to create generational wealth. But it's a challenge, and if you're in a capital-intensive business and you're not sitting on your own capital and have to look elsewhere, you ultimately have to get comfortable with the fact that you probably will, on an economic basis, drop below 51%. But structuring it now in a way that you can bring that capital in and abide by the guidelines and regulations from the various regulators is important. One of the things that we are seeing, more and more in Massachusetts that has been blessed by the regulators is, is doing some type of convertible note financing where those notes cannot be converted for, 3 years or for however longer that, period gets extended. It's a risk from the lender, but it gives them the equity upside that they want if they're going to truly be your capital partner. Obviously, if you have an existing business with cash flow, that has become more and more of an option. But if you're a social equity applicant who's just gotten your license, and that's all you have, that's really not, it's not an issue. It's not available, and so you have to find really, a equity partner who is willing to take 49% at the moment, but we'll have ways to increase their stake as and when. So convertible notes, we've been playing around with call options where they can buy out a portion of your stake to get to a majority stake, after 3 or 4 years. And so, a part of this from the license holder point of view is, what is their vision? I mean, are they, if they're going to insist on having 51% forever, it's going to be challenging unless you can really bootstrap it.
So what's the requirement? 3 years to hold the?
Well, I mean, on the delivery, it's 3 years, but 3 years with an asterisk. They have the right to extend it. So, you're going to have to, that the goal is to find a capital provider, who's willing to ride out whatever the period is, who frankly believes in social equity. And I would say, and we're having more and more of these conversations as the Northeast expands, and there are a number of capital providers who want to back the social equity applicants for all the right reasons, right? I mean, they believe in in righting previous wrongs to large classes of folks, to backing them in a way that ultimately they can be successful, create generational wealth, and hopefully people will gravitate to them and not for the folks who dangle something that looks really good in front, but if you dig down into the weeds, you're going to wind up with 2% of the business after they've converted everything they can convert.
Yeah, understood. So listen, my next question I'm going to really open up for everybody, but Michael, maybe you'll take the first shot at it. So what's it like working with the CCC in Massachusetts? What do you think other states can learn from the experience in dealing with Massachusetts? If you had the, if we had the era of all aspirational licensees in New York, what would you tell them? What would you
Well,
even tell the regulators on that side?
Yeah.
You know, what would you tell them about making New York more business friendly?
I think there are, you know, I think there are a couple of, a couple of points, and we were actually discussing this on one of the New York, you know, bodies that I'm, you know, associations that I'm part of. Is, you know, don't rush the regulations just to get something out. I mean, be thoughtful about the impact they're going to have, and involve all aspects of the industry, so that you create a framework that works. I mean, you know, one of the areas that we're particularly focused on, you know, and are trying to push some thought in is, you know, don't have a provision that, you know, that says you can only, you know, particularly in limited license states, you only can have, you know, an interest in one license, because then you're not going to create, you know, from the capital side, a viable business plan. So, you know, I know New Jersey, for instance, has been discussing for social equity, you know, license holders, if, you know, you can have, as a capital provider, you know, up to a 35% interest in 7 license holders, right? By doing that, you are creating, you know, a business model that works on both sides. I think the other thing that's important is, you know, you can't have these, you know, these licensing processes take years and years, while also requiring your license holders to have tied up real estate and demonstrate they have a place to open up their facilities. So, you know, again, I hate to harp on New Jersey, but, you know, you have people here paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a month for cultivation, you know, facilities without even having the licenses being granted, because that was one of the requirements. And so, you know, it gets back to, you know, having, you know, regulators, I think, you know, and industry actually talking to one another to develop regulations that make sense for everybody.
Can I?
Charlotte, yeah, I was going to say Charlotte, Ryan, Jenny, Phil, chime in, please.
I'd like to chime in, because I've been through the licensing process in Massachusetts, and before I knew about, you know, what it was like in any other state, I thought it was horrible. And then I applied for a license in Illinois, and I realized that Massachusetts isn't so bad, because Illinois was awful. You know, it's Massachusetts is as you know, I feel like the regulators there listen. They do try. They're trying their best. I mean, they like to say to us, "We're a startup regulatory agency. You know, and we want to hear from you. We want to evolve with you." And I think the way that they handled, you know, the delivery licenses was their way of listening to the challenges that people have had with carrying real estate. You know, it's a totally different application process. You get a pre-certification, and then you can go out and look for your real estate and get your host community agreement. They saw that that was a flaw that they had. So they're listening, and they're much more transparent. I mean, in Illinois, I have no clue what's going on. It's a mess. I appreciate that transparency. And so it just hasn't been, you know, now that I know what it's like in other markets, it's, you know, I would characterize Massachusetts, while it is limited license in some ways, because there's so many restrictions, so many municipalities that have opted out, it's more of a free market model compared to like the beauty contest model in Illinois. And I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I'm out there, you know, meeting with, you know, met with Crystal People-Stokes last week. You know, she's and said, please, you know, make this an open free market, because the worst thing you can do. And I read the initiative report that Ryan, you know, sponsored. It's really interesting, and I share that view that these limited license beauty contests, they in the end are the worst thing for equity, I think.
Great. So listen, we're 3 minutes to the hour. Ryan, Jenny, or Phil, any comments that you'd like to make before we move to close?
I'll just reiterate what Charlotte said about the CCC. Jenny and I always looked at them as another startup just like us, and they were just doing their best. And I think that they've been trending up, and they are listening. They definitely listen to us, and I think things will just get better from here. And I think Massachusetts is a model that other states can definitely follow. And I know Freshly Baked, you know, we're looking into New York right now. We want to engage with them, and we want to kind of use Massachusetts as that model and show that would work, but you know what we could improve on as well.
Great.
Yeah, on the CCC side, but also on advice to anyone who's coming into Massachusetts freshly, not having been in other states and engaged in this industry in a normalized fashion. I think anyone that's writing rules needs to really understand how burdensome the tax schemes are in this industry. It's really overwhelming. and your finest tipped pencil is still missing some things come tax day, I promise you. And I think Massachusetts is about to see a real reckoning. It come Q1 2022 into Q2 2022, you're going to see 10-20% of stores struggle to pay their taxes because they're just trying to grow instead of track their finances. And so any state, I think, needs to look at that very carefully, and even more so the entrepreneurs.
Great. Well, look, I'd like to thank all of you, terrific panelists. Thank you for your great engagement. I'd also like to thank Jocelyn from Headset for sort of a great overview of the data going on in Massachusetts. And for you, our viewers, thank you again for filling out our survey. Again, it's important to us. Help us help you by delivering content that's meaningful. Just quick, wait, the slide is up. Quick overview of some of our future events. The Women's Inclusion Network. We're having, we produce programs pretty frequently. I think we're doing about one a month now. Please try to tune in for that. We also are going to be at MJ Biz, so please stop by our booth. We'll be there October 20th to the 22nd. And make sure you also join us for the next Arcview Access on October 28th, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, as we dig a little deeper into the opportunities in the psychedelic market. So again, thank you everybody. I think with that we'll close, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.